So I removed all the ignition coils. Cylinder number 1 was fine, didn't have any oil in it. Okay, so today I'm working on a 2011 Nissan Sentra. Customer states started the car and it felt rough and the check engine light was blinking. Whenever that happens, whenever your check engine light blinks, it's actually an indication that the code is bad enough to damage your catalytic converter. First thing that I did was hooked up my scanner. I read the codes and I was gonna try and see the live data coming from the car to see if there were any misfires, but for some reason my scanner for this car it doesn't have that option to read the misfires of each cylinder. So I really had nothing to do but to do a visual inspection under the hood. The customer actually stated that he read the code and it said that it was a P0303, which is a cylinder 3 misfire. And I scanned it myself, and then the code read a P0300, which means that it's multiple cylinders misfiring. Let's go under the hood and let's do a visual inspection. So I was actually going to do a power balance check on the car. I was going to remove cylinder number 3's ignition coil, unplug it, and see if there's any changes on the idle. But for this car, the intake manifold is actually blocking the spark plugs. So I have no choice but to remove the whole intake manifold and get access to the ignition coils and the spark plugs. I removed that, and since I can't start the car without the throttle body and the intake manifold disconnected, just went ahead and see what the spark plugs look like and what the ignition coils look like. So I removed all the ignition coils. Cylinder number 1 was fine, didn't have any oil in it. Oh shit. Cylinder number 2's ignition coil had oil in it too. Is that a good sign? That might be the cause of our misfire. Cylinder number 3 had a little bit of oil in it as well. And cylinder number 4 also had oil in it. So I went ahead and looked further down. I took all the spark plugs off, and my spark plug socket was it was drained in oil. So, and I removed the spark plugs and check those out. They are they're completely soaked in oil. So that's the cause of our misfire. It is makes me think that it's a bad valve cover gasket and bad spark plug tube seals. So spark plugs are wet. I went ahead and removed the whole valve cover, and the gasket is so brittle that it stayed on the head. And these are the spark plug tube seals, and it just snapped off. So that's my problem. I'm gonna go ahead and order the part. Here's the valve cover right here. I'm gonna go ahead. Yeah, this thing's it's not even rubber. It's plastic. It's like plastic, hard plastic now. See, he just snapped off. So I'm gonna go order a new valve cover gasket and new spark plug tube seals. Well, it's one piece, so a new valve cover gasket, and replace it and clean this chamber as much as I could. Get rid of all the oil that's down in there. It doesn't actually look too bad from here. I'm gonna go ahead and try my best to clean those out, and also recommend new spark plugs. I'm going to do a test on the ignition coils, see if I'm gonna do a resistance check on all the ignition coils and see if each of them are still good, and I think they're still good. I think we just need a spark plug replacements, 4 new spark plugs, and a valve cover gasket replacement. last day and this car's kicking my butt. I got everything back. I replaced the spark plugs and the valve cover gasket. All the spark plugs are dry now, and the car's still reading a misfire. Still reading P0300. I don't really know what to do because I couldn't power balance. The ignition coils, like I said, because it's covering, the intake manifold is covering. Good job, Nissan. So I borrowed a scanner from a friend, a better scanner. Let's go ahead and start the car. Yeah, it's still pretty shaky. So what I did was hook up the scanner, read the trouble codes, and that's the code that it was reading. Next thing I did was I went to special functions and I looked at the misfire count for this one, because this one actually has that option. So cylinder 1's misfiring 196, and cylinder 2 is what I'm worried about right here. It has the most misfire, so I'm going to go ahead and try diagnosing this part. And then the next thing that I did was an actuation test, and I went to power balance, because for this scanner you could do a power balance without doing it physically. You could do it with the scanner. Click a cylinder and the scanner will disconnect that cylinder's power from clicking it from here. I went ahead, clicked cylinder 1, and yeah, the car died. So that means cylinder 1 is good. That means whenever there's a change in each cylinder where you disconnect it, that means that that cylinder is not affecting the misfire. And if you go to cylinder 2, keep in mind cylinder 2 is the one that has the most misfires. So in theory, if I power balance this cylinder number 2, the car shouldn't react or have little to no reaction at all. Yeah, nothing happened. The car is not even shaking. Cylinder number 2 is currently deactivated right now, and the car is still running as normally with the misfire on. Okay, now we go to cylinder number 3, and then the camera's probably not going to do it justice, but you can hear the motor really struggling. Go back to cylinder number 2, and nothing happens. Alright guys, so last night I actually managed to fix the misfire. I replaced the ignition coil right here. This was the one that was misfiring. Well, not this one, this one's a new one. I just replaced it, and I went ahead and read the codes on the car that all 4 cylinders aren't misfiring anymore. So that's good. I cleared the codes, and the P0303 didn't pop up again. But a new code popped up. It's a P0171. I hooked up my scanner, I visual inspected the whole engine bay first. Checked if these hoses have any cracks. The hoses that connect to the intake manifold. Nothing's cracked. Nothing seems to be leaking. I also did a smoke test on it. Nothing was leaking. I checked the mass airflow sensor over here. Took it out, and the resistors and transistors inside still seemed pretty clean, so I didn't think that was the problem. So I hooked up the scanner again. I checked my short-term and long-term fuel trims, and the short-term fuel trim was reading at around 29%. That's pretty freaking high. And the long-term was reading 10%. So you add those two together, it's around 39%. For a car like this, a 2.0 engine, usually the short-term and fuel trim levels should be plus or minus 10%. There's definitely a leak coming from somewhere. Took me a while to diagnose it. Figured out that it was this gasket. I did replace the intake manifold gasket from here. This rubber gasket right here, I already replaced it, and the throttle body gasket right over here, this one's replaced as well. I knew that it was coming from the intake manifold because there was a vacuum leak sound coming from there. I replaced it, put everything back together, and it still didn't work. I've been having a hard time finding where it was, but this morning I took everything apart again, and I saw that there's this plate of some sort connected to the cylinder head itself. So this connects to the cylinder head right over here, and this outer part connects to the plastic intake manifold. So I just replaced the gasket on this one. And now I'm pretty positive that the gasket that's failing is this metal gasket right here. It goes right here. That's the gasket that's failing. I'm pretty sure. So I ordered it from Nissan. I'll get it tomorrow and we'll see what happens. Just got back from Nissan. I got the part. Exact same gasket as you can see. The weird thing is, if you have a 2010 Nissan Sentra like this one, so you can see, conforms to regulations 2010. They're not gonna have this part in the system. I also checked on my Pro Demand on my Mitchell, and it cannot find this part number for a 2010 Nissan Sentra. However, if you input your car as a 2011, it will have this part. So if you guys need the part number, and if you're working on this exact same car with the exact same problem, here's the part number: 14035ZJ60A. Cool. I'm gonna install this gasket right now, and we'll check our data once again. Put everything back, check our data. So I put everything back, and I changed the manifold gasket, and the car seems to be running fine already. I have the data stream right here with my little OBD2 scanner. For some reason, these big scanners don't want to show me the fuel trims, but this little one does. So like I said before, the short-term fuel trim plus the long-term fuel trim should always just add up to plus or minus 10%. If you add those two together, it's supposed to be plus or minus 10%. If it goes above that, then it's gonna throw a P0171 code. Now I changed the intake manifold gasket from the intake manifold adapter connected to the cylinder head, and it fixed the issue. If you look at our short-term fuel trim and our long-term fuel trims right now, 10.2 minus 6.3 is gonna be at the plus or minus 10% range. I showed you guys before I changed the gasket. It was this short-term fuel trim was reading at about 29% or 30%. That's super high. It's supposed to be reading minus 7%. Now this long-term fuel trim right now is most likely gonna go down even more, because long-term fuel trim is getting data from the short-term. So once we drive the car even more, it's gonna go down. You need a couple of scanners too, or just one good scanner in order to fix this job. But yeah, finally, we got no codes. We're good to go. I'm gonna tighten everything up, all the hose clamps and stuff, and I'll put everything back, and we'll go ahead and call our customer and tell him that this job's finally done. Okay, so before I end the video, I just wanted to hook up my friend's big scanner just to confirm the repair that we've done. We're gonna go ahead and read the trouble code, see if there's any more codes in the system, and we're gonna go look at live data just to confirm that we don't have any more misfires. I'm gonna go ahead and read the trouble code. We don't have any trouble codes. Just go ahead and go to special functions and misfire count real time. So as you guys can see, cylinder 1 to 4, we don't have any more misfires. Keep in mind, this is real time, so this is what's happening currently right now in the motor. And let's look at the past misfire counts. And the past misfire counts also don't have any misfire from cylinder 1 to 4. So we don't have any more codes. We got rid of the vacuum leak from the P0171 code, and we got rid of the P0303 and the P0300 code with the misfire using this actuation test and the power balance test. So yeah, everything's good. This repair is confirmed. We're gonna go get back to the customer. So just a recap of what I did to the car and the parts that I've replaced. I replaced one ignition coil because it was bad. I replaced 4 spark plugs because they were soaked in oil, and the valve cover gaskets as well, because that's where the leak was coming from, going into the spark plug holes. I also replaced this PCV valve seal right here. The PCV valve seemed to be fine, so I just replaced the seal because it was leaking from here. And since that leak was spewing oil out of the valve cover, this wire covers right here got all deteriorated, so I replaced that because this area right here is pretty hot. So if these wires don't have any covers on them, it may cause a short. I replaced the intake manifold gaskets and the throttle body gasket as well. And there's also a secondary intake manifold gasket. It would be after the intake manifold adapter. So don't forget that if you're gonna be working on this car. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Everything that I did. We confirmed that the repair is good. And yeah, that'd be the end of this video.